Okay, so picking up where we left off, we're using the symbolic version of that. There's some examples you can look at, but let's just go through a couple. So I want to do, basically, I want to change like the group permission. So I do CH, hang on, I gotta get focus here. CH MOD, and then I would say like group, then I see G plus W or minus W or something like that, meaning add or remove, right? Group minus W or plus W, however you want to do it, test one. And so one more time. So now I remove the right permission off of the group. Now I'm going to ask you to change permissions in, you know, like a homework assignment, and I may ask you to use the octal notation, maybe. But generally speaking, if you have the task of changing the permissions, it doesn't really matter which one you use. So just to kind of get familiar with it, there's a lot of examples on table 9.6, so take a look at those examples so make sure you kind of understand how they work. Okay, now if I just create me a brand new file, so I'm going to say touch test 6. What are the permissions going to be? In other words, what are the default permissions? Well, let's go take a peek. Well, the default permissions for me is read and write, and read. Okay. Here's where octal numbers come in again, and this time there is no substitute. If you want to change how that works, there's a thing called a mask. And a mask is kind of a math term and computer science term, so I won't get into too much details on how it actually works. But so if I was to let's assume that everyone starts with using the octal notation. Everyone starts with 777, which would be RWX, RWX, RWX. Cool. And then I want to subtract from that something. For example, I want to remove the X. Then I would say UMask 002. Okay, that would remove one thing. Okay, so now I'm going to do another test where I create a file, number 7, and then we'll take a look at this guy. Well, I guess I'll have to type that. And it actually didn't make any differences because that's where I was already at. Let me try that again. Let's do UMask 022. That would remove the right permission for both the group and the other. So UMask, and then I'm going to do another touch. Test 8, and then ls minus al. Test 8, and ta-da! Okay, so yes, unfortunately, this is one of those situations where you maybe octal notation is going to have to be required. It's kind of weird. Now, having said that, UMask is for creating what the default permission would be for a new file. What did it do with my existing files? It didn't do anything for my existing files whatsoever. And by the way, if I log out and log back in, it's going to go back to the original UMask value that was set. Okay, so this is temporary. Kind of makes sense? Okay, so again, if that's a little fuzzy, then you kind of sort of need to look through it. So if you look at the examples, UMask sometimes has 4 digits rather than just 3 digits. Maybe we talked about the groups of 3. Well, there's actually a hidden one that you can't see, and it's kind of weird, so I'll go ahead and give it to you, and then we'll kind of discuss what that means a little bit later on. There's one called the set user ID bit, the set group ID bit, and the sticky bit. Okay, I'm probably not even going to talk about the sticky bit one. But the set user ID means this works really well for some application. Let's say I have an application that I have to run as a member of the accounting group. Okay? So yeah, I've kind of got that permission, but it's not one of my primary groups. And so if I was to do set group ID to accounting, then when I run that command, it automatically switches my group for me. Kind of cool. I like that. Okay, now we really haven't talked much about groups, so just hang in there. I promise we'll get to them. So those are the extra ones that you can't see in the LS listing. The next thing you talk about is called changing identities. So in the old days, you had the SU command, which stood for switch user. I logged in as me, and I want to switch user as Bob. And so I'd say SU Bob and type in Bob's password and go do something, and then exit out and come back to me. Most typically, the SU command was designed to run as root. So you would just type SU without a name, and it would automatically just promote you to root, and you would stay root for the duration until you finally said exit. Now that's not exactly smart, because when you SU into root, you have to know root's password. So if I have 100 people and 20 of them temporarily have to be able to install some software, I would have to give them the root password. 20 people with the root password on my system? Wow. If you're a security person, you should be kind of twitching now, going, I don't want to do that. So the sudo command was designed to solve that problem. The sudo command allows you to type in your password, not the root password, to be able to temporarily elevate yourself. So we, in the Ubuntu world, don't actually even have the sudo command. I'm sorry, the SU command by itself. We use sudo only. Okay. So that's kind of how it works. The way it's supposed to work is, it runs a new shell, until you type exit, and it pops on back exactly where we left off. Okay. So sudo command is different in that it's only for that one command line. I mean, as soon as that command line is done, you're back. Unlike SU, where you're there as long as you want. You could be on there all day long. Now, let me just tell you, in my world, 10 million years ago when I did this for a living, one of the things we did is when we logged in as root, we had the root command change the background color of the terminal to red. That way, it would be practically impossible to walk off and leave your terminal while you were logged in as root, because it's big, bright red in your face. That, oh my God, you need to be done here and exit out before you walk off and leave. So that was just a precaution, because sometimes, you forget, right? It's very easy to forget whether or not you've logged in as root or not, just by looking at things. So we made a visual distinction. Okay. So we've done sudo a bunch so far, mainly with dealing with installing files. There's some things. There's a way you can see how the sudo command works. I could go in and say, for example, I want Bob to use sudo, but only for the apt-get command. Nothing else. Isn't that pretty cool? In other words, I can narrow it down. We're going to be talking about that in the other book, so I'm just telling you about it now. Okay, so let's talk about file ownership. Okay, so change mod or mode was for permissions, and then change owner, chown, it's kind of hard to pronounce, chown, is for going in and changing the owner. Now, this is one of those odds. Most of the time when you do a command, there's like going to be a minus option for whatever the option is, right? Like -A and -L, that kind of stuff. Now, here's one of those where they're using colons to kind of pair up something. So I happen to know that there is a user out there called, actually I'm just going to go, maybe I don't know. Let's go look at what choice of users I have. So I'm just going to type less, etc. password, because that's going to have all my users in it. So let's just pick on, I don't know, LP, okay? For no particular reason, just because it's kind of sort of. So I want to change one of my guys. I want to change the owner. So if I said chown LP test 8, changing ownership permission not permitted. Oh no! Well, I thought I was the owner. No, that only existed with the change permission thing. For owners, the idea is you shouldn't be able to give away a file. All right, you shouldn't be able to take one of your own files and give it to someone else. No, that's one of the things that requires super user kind of thing. So I'm going to do sudo, I'm going to do chown, and I'm going to say LP colon, and I'm going to put a group in there. And I'm just looking up here because I can't quite get it in my head here. There's a group, apparently one of the group numbers is 112, okay? I have no idea what, well, no, I'm going to give it by its name. So I'm just going to say LP test 8. Okay, so now if I look at test 8, it's going to be owned by LP and the group has changed to LP. Kind of makes sense? Okay. Okay, so changing owner is a little different because you separate the owner from the group with a colon, which is pretty doggone rare in our world. Okay, so let me ask you a question. A file can have only one owner, is that correct? Yep, it can. And only one group. Ooh, wait a minute, that sounds a little weird. Only one group? I mean, there's the group. And I have a group called Emmett Gray. Every time you build a new user, it creates a group with the same name as the user. Don't worry about why. And so every file can only have one user and one group. So if I wanted to have multiple groups, I would basically have to go in and like create a sales group and then put everyone in that group and then go back and change the group here. And if somebody else wanted it, well, then I would have to, like the engineering people also needed it, I would have to create another group called sales plus engineering or something like that, because there's no nesting of groups. I can't put a group inside a group, and I can't have multiple groups. Now, this is far inferior to the way Microsoft does it in Active Directory or just plain old setups, where when it comes to group permissions, you can have as many groups as you want. You have 30 or 40 groups associated with a file or a directory. Here, we don't have that luxury, so it's a little different. Okay, so if I want to share a folder with two people, I got to basically create a group that's got those two people in it. Okay, just telling you. So it's a little complex. So on page 104, they talk about exercising our privileges, yes. And they talk about the set group ID. Remember I talked about that, and the UMask. So let's say, for example, I'm going to a folder where the salespeople have some stuff. I want to make it so that every time you create a new file inside that folder, that it automatically gets write permission for the group. Because maybe your UMask is a 022. Well, 022 will not put write permission. So you go over there and say, hey, I just finished working on this document. I copied it up to the shared folder, and everybody else says, we can't read it. So I need to alter my UMask when I'm dealing with that particular folder. Now, if it's a network share, there are some really cool tricks on how to automatically change the UMask when you connect to a network resource. If it's on your own machine, you're just going to have to remember to change your UMask, which is pretty bad. So creating a new user, let's create a new user. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to say add user as soon as I get focus. Add user, and then I'm going to say Bob. Okay, so this is going to create me a brand new user called Bob. Let's just do it. So I do this, and what do you think is going to happen? Oh, come on, you know, right? It's going to say, oh man, only root can do that. Yeah, I forgot. So sudo add user Bob. And then it goes through and says, okay, we're creating a user, we're creating a group, we're creating a home directory, we're and enter this guy's new password. Well, I'm just going to call it Bob. Okay, and the full name, he's Bob Smith. And root number, I'm just going to hit return. I don't care about all that stuff. Is the information? Yes, fine. Okay, boom. So we just created a brand new user. Kind of cool, huh? So let's go look at him. So if I go less, etc. password, boing, there he is down at the bottom. He's Bob. He's user number 1001 with a group of 1001. He's Bob Smith, and he's the home directory for him, and his default shell is called bash. Okay, we're coming up on the 15-minute mark, so you know what we're doing.